And we should be live.
Okay, we're streaming.
All right.
So, Frank,
Yeah?
this is your studio.
I mean, I don't... If I have to designate something as my studio for live broadcast, it would be my room.
Okay.
So that's where we're in.
And we have the beautiful Beijing...
Shanghai.
Shanghai. I knew where we were. Okay, I'm just
Beijing
testing
and
you.
Shanghai are pretty... Actually, I think they're pretty close. They're both sort of like in the northeastern part of China.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know where we are because I got off the plane last night. I just was testing you.
Yeah.
So
Making sure I'm fully
so
awake.
Frank.
Yes.
So, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb.
Oh boy.
Isn't that eerie?
I think it's just it just communicates something different. It communicates, whereas the lion shall dwell with the lamb is talking about Zion or Israel type of thing. Wolf shall dwell with the lamb just means like evil, like the stuff that was split apart from everybody by Eve eating the apple and everything, and all the evil in the world shall finally be at peace with the good in the world.
But there's something sinister if you read the context of the Bible and the prophetic nature of Isaiah and looking forward. I think the interpretation that this is Israel again, Zion, God's chosen people, and the Lamb. Well, what's the Lamb? Jesus is the Lamb.
Yeah.
He's the Prince of Peace. He's the peace bringer. And I mean, you've probably seen the Google images of the lion. Or I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
Should we give some context to anyone who's actually
Okay.
listening?
Okay.
Do you want to say it or should I?
So you go ahead.
So yeah. Oh great, the heater's going on. All right. Hopefully that doesn't.
Well, this is February in Shanghai.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
People think of China as being really hot.
Yeah, there's this
burr.
So Israel is not Israel, Isaiah. So Isaiah is this big prophetic book in the Bible, sort of in the middle in the Old Testament. That's just a bunch of prophecy and just writings of what's to come when everything sort of goes down. Right. This is when Israel, the country, was in a pretty dark place. And there's this one verse that's foreseeing that the metaphorical wolf shall lie with the lamb. But everyone seems to remember it. This is an example of the quote-unquote Mandela effect, which isn't anything other than faulty human memory. But, to humor the Mandela effect, people, it seems to have changed from the lion shall lie or dwell, depending on the translation, with the lamb, to the wolf shall lie/dwell with the lamb.
Yeah, which again, there are many pastors, scholars, biblical savants.
You've got to untighten it and retighten it because you just sort of like pushed it up and then it went right back down.
Who have weighed in on YouTube and elsewhere, which makes it authoritative. That they distinctly remember. And this isn't just a random verse from the Bible. This is a well-known, oft-cited, oft-referenced verse, and it's found its way into numerous pieces of art where you see a lion dwelling with the lamb, and the little quote from the scripture down there with the citation. And for somehow this to have been wrong all along, that people were misquoting the book of Isaiah all these years, and that, well, it wasn't a lion, it was actually a wolf, which has this sinister context because, of course, a wolf is a predator.
Okay.
And the lamb is its natural prey.
So, first of all, I think that people do like to not remember the fact that it has a sinister context. I think another big part of this is alliteration. Lion and lamb both start with L. It makes it more poetic, makes it more easy to remember.
Well, perhaps, but keep in mind that the scripture doesn't, in its present post-Mandela effect form, in the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, it doesn't mean they're dwelling in harmony. It doesn't mean that they're dwelling in peace or cohabitating. It just means that they are going to be right at each other's throats.
I don't know. The fact is that there have been so many times when I've realized that my memory is fallible, when I have distinct memories of something, and then it turns out to not be true, that I just cannot.
We're talking about the most about the book that has been published more than any other in the history of the world, more widely read, more widely studied, more widely understood than any other book.
So,
and for this to have been wrong, I mean, it would be one thing if there were biblical scholars and others sounding off going, "Oh, you idiots, let me explain why the wolf makes sense, why it's always been the wolf." But those voices aren't out there. Instead, everybody is freaking out.
So you've never heard you've never seen any website or like any sort of source that's saying there's this other verse that talks about a lion and something that people are confusing it with. Because I remember looking it up, and there was some sort of easy way for everyone to get it confused.
No, I don't remember that. I haven't seen that. In other words, that people are conflating it with some other verse that indeed talks about a lion in a similar kind of context. It's always Isaiah, whatever it is, 21 chapter or whatever, and lion, and it's in the artwork. I mean, that you have to admit that's pretty strange for someone to go to the effort of making this illustration
without ever actually looking. Let's see what the Bible says about this,
and without having been inspired by it over and over and over, and sort of wanting to document and illustrate this prophecy of peace. It's odd.
It is odd. I mean, some of the Mandela effects are pretty odd.
So let's move on to the other the other prominent biblical Mandela effect,
which is wineskins, right? Wineskins turn into bottles.
Yeah. No, help me out with that one a little bit.
Yeah. So Jesus says like something at like some party or something, and he so this is in the New Testament, and he just says some sort of like type of proverb to a bunch of people. He says, "Now listen up. You cannot put new wine into old bottles." Now everyone seems to remember it as being wineskins. Now this is another Mandela effect that I just don't trust, because our instinct would say wineskins because it sounds like an older thing. We, especially if it's like the King James Bible or something, it would make sense for us to remember it as wineskins.
Yeah, and furthermore, you can almost you can almost see it as, well, for instance, we were playing this game last night where we were filling in the latter half of these supposed old cultural sayings.
Yeah,
and we were coming up with all this artful, like poetic type stuff that sounded really good. It sounded better than the actual
sounded
saying.
Like an actual proverb that you could apply to your life.
And so with the wineskins bottle one, it sort of it makes more sense. It resonates more, and you go, oh, this sounds all old timey and biblical to say wineskin. So this bottle stuff, that's something you get at Safeway. They didn't have Safeway back then.
Now I remember actually knowing this verse before I heard about the Mandela effect. It was talked about one day in back last year, sophomore year, in a biblical narrative too. And my inclination is to say that I remember it being wineskins and that I fell for the Mandela effect. I'm really not sure. Now here's the problem with that. The thing about the whole Mandela effect is that people seem to switch at different times, right? So there's no clear turning point that anyone can pinpoint.
Well, yeah, and with a lot of, of course, a lot of Mandela effect centers around like consumer product names like Kit Kat and Jiffy peanut butter that doesn't exist and everything. But with something like the Bible, it's more like this just doesn't make sense, and this doesn't align with history, with what we know about actual on the ground archaeology from that time. The other one being, and I excuse me, I'm forgetting the verse or the exact context for this one. If we'd done a little show prep, Frank, like I wanted to,
I could grab a Bible right now.
Okay, well let me just throw this one out there. So there's a passage where they talk about wheat, grain, alrighty, and instead in the Bible, King James Version, the grain is corn, of all things, which is a product of the New World, as are potatoes, for example.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, corn, maize. is purely a product of the New World.
So you're saying this is literally impossible for it to be corn.
That's what
in
I'm
the Bible.
saying. Yeah, and the Bible makes this reference to corn, to like storing up the corn for, I don't know what it is, but it says corn. And how old are these guys in?
And so what's the Hebrew word for corn?
Well, I think
Or Greek or whatever it was in.
I think the apologists, if you will, say that the translators of the King James version saw the word grain, and they kind of went, oh, grain. Well, that could go a few different ways. So corn sounds good. Let's just do that. But they didn't know what corn was.
The King James version was made in the 1500s, so theoretically, they could have known some stuff about the New World because Christopher Columbus would have been like just coming back.
Fair enough. Although Christopher Columbus, as you know, he arrived in Hispaniola, modern day Haiti, basically, Dominican Republic, and I don't know that corn did exist there.
So maybe, I don't know what other expeditions had been to the New World since, because the King James version. Because it was in, the King James version would have been well into the 16th century.
Yeah, but even if they had some awareness of it, that would be like us writing about the revolutionary times, and instead of having hand-to-hand messengers, we said, well, they just typed it on their cell phone, or they texted someone about it. It just strikes you as, wait a minute, that's a super new thing.
Yeah.
So if some historian modernly was writing, injecting something that was brand new, a new discovery.
Yeah, like what's his name? Paul Revere texted everyone in the group chat, the British are coming.
Which to Europeans of the 1500s it would have been. It would be akin to what's an animal that like a buffalo, like saying, oh, God said to sacrifice 2 buffalo to the deity, in the book of, I don't know, Deuteronomy or something.
Maybe they were just capitalizing on the novelty and the excitement surrounding the New World.
I don't think so, man. I don't think that's
let's apply Occam's razor here. What's a more likely explanation? They used corn for some odd reason when they were originally translating it, and they came up with, some reason like it, playing off the novelty of the New World or something like that. They just heard about corn. They thought corn was cool, and some dude just stuck corn in there. Or there's some completely unexplainable, ridiculous way that it got changed for no reason.
The latter, because
that's a simpler explanation.
These weren't dudes. These weren't 2 guys sitting there with candles and parchment and stuff like that. They had hundreds of copies of the Bible. They were all exactly the same, and these guys were making a faithful translation that has stood up to time.
Still, yeah.
It was cross-checked. It was double-checked. It was, the amount of peer review that went into the King James Bible is incredible. And there's no way that some smart-ass cleric or some monk just said, "Oh, you know what? I wanna like sex this up a little bit. I want the kids to read this. So I'm gonna put corn in here."
Appeal to the younger demographic.
So on a similar vein, and here's why I can't get on board with Mormonism. Okay.
I would hope that there are many reasons why. But
well, okay. The main reason is because the Bible is somewhat historically accurate. No, it is. Well, it is.
By somewhat you mean broadly?
Well,
because there's
in terms of describing what life was like during those eras.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
There is some wacky kind of mythical. There's talking snakes.
There's
and
wacky
burning
mythical
bushes
stuff.
And
There's a massive empire that there's almost no evidence for.
Well,
in Israel and of the Old Testament.
True, and modern scholars for that reason posit that King David, the king of Israel, really was king of no more than a hill.
Yeah.
And this is what the most ardent Christian evangelists admit to these days is that King David was just a little tribal leader.
Yeah, just like the 12 tribes of Israel, this big mystery. Most historians agree they never existed.
Okay, but that being said, you have to go pretty far in the Bible to find something where they're talking about common everyday life, where they're talking about animal husbandry, or crops or boats.
What you're saying is that if it's historical fiction, it's good historical fiction.
It is, yeah. It's very apt. Whereas in the Book of Mormon, one thing that that I know Mormons have gone to great lengths to try to prove is the fact that these well, it was 2 tribes of Israel, right? And they departed for the New World. They like sailed over here. And reading the Book of Mormon, there are all these crazy battles with war elephants and with chariots and stuff and wheels in the Americas. And the Mormon Church has funded these extensive archaeological missions to try to find the frickin' elephant bones, to try to find the chariot wheels, and they just can't find them. They've literally they've scoured South America, North America, everywhere. They're not there. What's interesting, though, about that is there was perhaps up until about 8,000 years ago, or maybe even later, this very elephantine looking animal in North America and in modern day United States. And it was one of those things I just tripped across on Wikipedia, and I looked at this thing with this super long snout. I mean, if you looked at it, you would say it's an elephant. It's shaped a little bit differently, and in fact, it's not related to the elephant at all. But it looks a lot like it. It has the same kind of like gray leathery skin. They're large. They have this long, and I think they even have tusks. And I was looking at that, and there's not a single reference in there on Wikipedia to well, maybe the Mormons were right. You know, maybe they did tame these. You know, they called them elephants for shorthand.
Yeah.
And
you know, have you ever seen the first European or Western drawings of African or Eastern animals such as the elephant?
No.
Pretty wacky. These monks and stuff were heard about, they only heard what an elephant looks like from these travelers who of course couldn't draw, and then these monks would try to draw an elephant.
So this was like the game of telephone, like it was passed on second hand, third hand, fourth hand.
And so it's just like a 3-year-old would draw a better elephant.
Yeah, more accurately. So I've, you know, have you ever had, I mean, I love Mormons, okay? I am part Mormon. I mean, my lineage, you know what I mean? As are you, young man.
Yes.
So let that be a lesson
by definition.
Do the missionaries ever knock on your door?
No, we've had like one Jehovah's Witness in our entire life.
Okay.
Here at the Hurley household.
I have been blessed with many visits from the elders, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're very recognizable and distinct because they wear white shirts. They're young men in white shirts. They typically ride bicycles around, and they knock on your door. And these guys are hella cool. They're like 19 years old, and these guys put up with so much grief.
Yeah.
I mean, they get yelled at.
They're thick-skinned.
They get spit on.
Dang.
I mean, yeah, because people see them as the embodiment of sort of conservative Christianity and of patriarchy and all these supposedly evil things, and they imagine them in Utah with 40 wives and, you know, being all misogynistic and stuff. But these guys are we still live?
Oh, that's a problem. Did the camera? So we should still have audio, but something happened with the camera. So keep talking. I'm gonna do technical.
All right. All right. So these Mormon kids, though, they're amazing. They're amazing young men. I always give them props and kind of boost them up, because in my mind, even though their religion is something I can't personally swallow, these gentlemen are doing something where they are trying to bring people closer to God, and it's their version of God, and it doesn't jibe with a lot of people. But if nothing else, they are introducing the concept and bringing it to one's doorstep in the oldest tradition. They're missionaries. They're going door to door, and it's something they believe in stridently. And the rest of us aren't doing that. You know what I mean? We're kind of slacking off, and maybe we'll go on Reddit or make a YouTube video about it. But to actually go door to door recognizably with a name tag and a white shirt and a bicycle helmet, that really builds character, I've got to believe. And to ask people about the deepest mysteries of the universe. Who's God? What is God's plan for us? What does he want for us? But these Mormons, these young men, they would come to my house when I lived in Eureka, and I would invite them in and talk to these guys and ask them to educate me and bring me on board and, you know, teach me about this religion and why I should believe it. And I remember, you know, early on,
I think we're back on visual.
We're back. Okay, we're back in Shanghai.
All right.
All right. Yeah. So as I was saying, these Mormon kids, they're awesome, and yet there were certain things I couldn't get around, like the war elephants and the chariots and stuff, which again now I'm starting to wonder because of these kind of ice age relics. They weren't mastodons, they weren't woolly mammoths, they were southern, like tropical type elephants, and they were in Texas and Arizona and around there. But the other thing I would ask these Mormon kids is, okay, so I would hold up the Book of Mormon and I'd go, okay, so this is the book that what was his name? Help me out.
John Smith, right? Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith.
Yeah, Joseph Smith was called a prophet. Dum dum
Yeah,
dum dum dum.
yeah. And I would say, okay, so guys, this was written on gold tablets, right? Word for word. And these were discovered up in the hills of northern New York, modern day New York State, right? How big were these tablets, and how much did they weigh? I mean, because in my mind, to squeeze what's in that book into a legible form on gold plates, we're talking about a refrigerator-sized stack of hundreds of plates.
Yeah, super thin ones too.
Well, yeah, thin, but collectively weighing a ton.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And plus, gold, when it gets paper thin like that, is very weak and malleable.
For sure.
It bends, it chips off, it flakes off, and I'm trying to picture a robust enough construction of this refrigerator-sized thing that this guy just happened to find in the forest, and that he just kind of said, "Well, I'm just gonna take this home with me." Ah, good day to you, sir. And then he hides this thing in his. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just went, man, you know, give me something else, dude. Now, the 10 Commandments on a piece of stone, yeah.
I
could see that.
That makes sense.
But gold, all this on gold plates, I was like, gentlemen, just tell me how big these plates were and how he moved this stuff.
You needed a magnifying glass in order to see it. So.
And how he kept it intact and hidden away. Like, dude, you can imagine people coming over and going, hey, what's with the refrigerator full of gold?
Yeah, he could have. He probably would have made more money by selling all that gold than making a religion off of it.
Well, he could have done both. He could have done both, and
he could have like translated it all and then accidentally melted it into convenient little gold bars
and funded his odyssey across the United States. Okay, so Mormonism, a very interesting religion. Now, of course, as an amateur genealogist, I have at least an appreciation for Mormons because they provide so much of the genealogical resources for not just Mormons, for everyone else. It's insane. Like when we got the microfilms from Greece of the old like records and census and stuff from our tiny little island that didn't have running water until 1991. That all my Greek ancestors are from. We had to go to the Latter-day Saints church down in Hollister. Wow. And I believe Ancestry.org itself is affiliated with the LDS Church, is it not?
Family Search is. I'm not sure about Ancestry.
No, I think it is. If you read the fine print, it says the Church of Latter, whatever.
That's my favorite thing is that as soon as someone calls Mormons like, oh, the LDS Church, you know that they're a Mormon.
Oh, the LDS. Yeah, we don't like to say Mormon. So speaking of genealogy and Mormonism, what exactly is the impetus behind their? I mean, why are they? It ties into their faith in some way, does it not?
I'm sure it does.
I think they want to show that we're all from this common tribe of Israeli Native Americans or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So moving on.
Okay.
Moving on. This is our. By the way, if you're just joining us, this is our inaugural live stream.
This is my second Joe Rogan ripoff podcast.
Okay. And sitting to my left, your right, is Frank Hurley.
Hello.
Frank, say hello.
I'm Frank.
I am Ryan Hurley. I am Frank Hurley's uncle.
Correct. He's my dad's brother.
And we long have been planning to put some kind of a podcast or a vlog, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some sort of live broadcast. I didn't even want to do live initially, or we could do like the live one on Google Hangouts with terrible quality. But now that we're in person, we can do live with condenser mics.
Yeah, but there is something awesome about live, especially when you let people phone in.
For sure.
Which we're going to eventually get running.
I don't think it's right. I have it running for Skype. I'm not sure about phones, but we could figure out just call in and stuff. We could do that on like a different podcast today or whatever if we want to just have fun with it.
Incidentally, we are broadcasting live on what platform?
YouTube.
On YouTube.
Heck yeah.
Okay. You know, I have tried to work out the kinks with YouTube Live. I figured since I have a cherished Gmail account that I would be able to just push a button and my phone would broadcast me. It's not that easy.
It's not that well. It's relatively easy for me. So I did this. I was working on the musical, right? But I just hated working on it so much that I wanted to find ways. My brain found ways to distract myself, and I was like, "Wait a minute. What if I try to just do a live broadcast?" And so I grabbed a little like Shure microphone, my dad's old like Audio Technica like SM58 ripoff from forever ago, and I just sat myself in front of the green screen and I downloaded OBS. I couldn't figure out how to get it to work because I opened the 32-bit version instead of the 64-bit version. Great job, Frank. But I was able to just have a webcam on a tripod and a microphone and use YouTube directly to do that. And so I just did a podcast test with that. Then I got OBS working. I got myself in front of the green screen. Then I eventually was able to get call-ins working. So it's just been trial and error. But you need, you need a computer. You need internet, you need some sort of microphone, some sort of webcam, and a set or a green screen or something.
Well, and when you say green screen, I mean I'm assuming you used to actually do this in front of a green screen. I mean, was this in your bedroom?
This was in my bedroom. But now that we're having a family reunion in Shanghai, China, I just thought, well, why not out of our penthouse hotel suite just have this beautiful cityscape that's outside of our window.
Yeah, right behind us. We just opened the blinds here a minute ago,
yeah.
And we're gonna have some takeout delivered. Are we getting the takeout?
Yeah, we're gonna get the takeout. We're gonna eat after the podcast.
Do they do that here, or is that just an American thing?
Well, let's hope they do it here because that's what we ordered. Like takeout, and there was a little bit of a translation issue. I'm not sure they quite understood.
Yeah. So Frank, I've been dying to ask you this. Why are you a moon landing denier?
I'm not a moon landing denier. I think we went to the moon.
Oh, wow. Okay, why do you believe that?
I
saw the pictures because it's in the newspaper. It's in the encyclopedia, man.
Oh, great.
No, why? Okay, first of all, you were born in what year?
I was born in 2002.
Okay, so that's 30 years after the proclaimed, 33. 33 years. Okay, continue.
So, look, I'm not an expert on the topic. But as a general rule of thumb, if everyone is saying that we did it, all of this massive team of scientists, all the people involved, all of these non-NASA organizations such as those Australian guys who tracked it and everything else is saying that we did it, and the only people, no offense, who are particularly skeptical of the moon landing seem to be crazy conspiracy theory people, I think it's pretty safe to say that we went to the moon.
Now, here's what's odd about it, is that it's one of those things that is not subject to peer review.
Okay.
It is not repeatable. Well, I mean, maybe it is, but it hasn't been yet.
True.
Okay. Whereas when one examines the other notable firsts in the history of humankind, first to circumnavigate the globe, first to the North Pole, first to summit Everest, these kinds of things, inevitably the second somebody does the unattainable or the impossible, everybody's on board, and it's boring, and everybody's doing it. I have these.
Here's the thing: the moon landings were such a huge ordeal that after the USA did it a bunch of times, nobody. You know that there was a massive failed Russian moon program that almost made it.
Well, what's odd though is that the same could be said of the Apollo program. That it was a massive effort that was a failure.
In what sense?
Well, in the sense that here we are 50 years later now. This year, this July, will be the 50th anniversary, will it not?
Yeah.
Of Apollo 11?
Pretty crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, not only is there lingering doubt, but there's all this crazy stuff. I mean, they've lost the telemetry tapes. They've lost the original footage. And we have actual NASA archivists going on TV and saying, well, we taped over it, you know, or we just don't know where the telemetry data is. And whoops, yeah, it was in a warehouse somewhere. Okay. So that, coupled with the fact that these other, you know, nobody remembers the name of the first guy to summit Everest, the first guy to swim across the English Channel, or to do this or that, because the second it happened, there were 12-year-olds were doing it. Everybody was doing it.
This is different. The moon landing was such a massive financial ordeal that was done in part just to honor this dead president. Right? Not entirely. Of course, there was a financial impetus to get there before the Russians did. So
you know
that we
what's
could,
weird though?
Win the
you know
space
what's
race.
weird though?
What?
You know, Kennedy was elected in 1960 by a whisker, or 50. Whenever
He
it was.
Also bought the election, by the way.
Yeah.
He straight up just paid for votes.
Not only that, but there was. I mean, it's well documented that there was voter fraud in Chicago that narrowly swung it from Nixon to Kennedy.
That's true.
He won by a whisker. Not only that,
Kennedy died.
But
Kennedy was assassinated.
The other reason he was able to win was because he got in league with LBJ, who was a senator or something from Texas, from this huge electoral state.
Yeah.
They hated each other. You know, they had absolutely no kinship at all. This sort of Massachusetts elitist guy.
One of the JFK assassination theories is that LBJ commissioned the hit.
And you know, when you read about the Kennedy administration, yes, in hindsight, it was Camelot, and his wife was so beautiful, and it was the perfect thing. But during Kennedy's actual administration, he wasn't well liked by most people.
Do you have statistics to back that up?
No,
I'm gonna go ahead and trust you. But here's the thing. There's certainly an element that I think in the past you have dismissed as not being legitimate, but I have it on good authority that American national pride was something that the government actually cared about back then, right? When with the Concorde, which was the supersonic commercial airliner, right? Which was being made by a joint British and French coalition to create this supersonic jet. And Pan Am, which of course was the big airline back then in America, one of the biggest, was going to buy Concordes for their airline. And John F. Kennedy personally called them and said, "Hey, we need American Concordes. We don't want to be beat by the British. In the same way, we don't want to be beat by the Russians. And once we did beat the Russians, and retrospectively, everyone says America won the space race, even though Russia beat us to pretty much everything else. It was a cultural deal that did matter to the government."
Yeah, I agree. And testament to that is the fact that the world widely regards America as, the most advanced country. And I remember, during my college days, when I met people from foreign countries, they would say, "Well, you guys put a man on the moon."
Yeah, exactly.
So that says it all. We don't need to compare industry or educational standards or whatever. You guys put a freaking man on the moon and brought him back. And here's the deal. I want to believe
Okay.
that we put a man on the moon.
Are you sure that you actually want
yes,
to believe?
no. I do sincerely, and that we brought them back successfully. That we did it. Okay, that it's in my blood. That it was from the American soil. It was from my people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I feel a sense of pride, especially in a way being from Northern California, which is sort of the modern vanguard of technology, and this is something that I do carry around pride for that, for the microcomputer and
the internet was made because of the moon landing.
Silicon Valley. Well, hold on. But what disturbs me is that you can ask many legitimate questions that don't have good answers about the moon landing, and you're just left with no answers.
Is that just because your confirmation bias hasn't led you to actually find the answers, though?
I don't think so. No. And the thing is, it's like you would think that as time goes on that those answers will be more and more easily solved, but they're not. Because
So give me a question.
Okay, like for instance, the fact that the landing craft on the moon supposedly were landed on rocket power.
Yeah.
Okay, not aeronautically. Of course, the moon has no atmosphere. They didn't glide in, and that in the year 2016, I think it was, when SpaceX finally developed the ability to land a rocket on Earth, everybody went nuts. And I distinctly remember this being like, do you read the Google news feed at all?
Not really.
Where they aggregate news. Well, they always have a story right at the top. And you know, when like Brexit happened, or when there's some mass shooting or something, I mean, it puts the big story of the day up there.
Yeah.
And SpaceX is successfully landing a booster rocket on rocket power, not with a parachute or aerodynamically or glider or anything like that, but landing it with a rocket booster squirting out the bottom end
on Earth.
Yes. Okay. Granted.
You gave away the answer, right? It's because the moon has no atmosphere and it has way lower gravity, which makes it way easier.
Well,
you don't have the interference of all this air friction and pulling.
Well,
you
two things. Yes, it is lower gravity. Okay, it is lower.
Correct.
Granted, it's what,
1/8 or something.
Okay, so fine. Still, the entire Apollo 11 lunar. It was a lunar module, right?
Yeah.
We had the lunar module and the command module. The command module is up there orbiting around, which we'll get to that in a second, because that's another one I just can't wrap my freaking head around. But the
you think maybe you can't wrap your head around it because you're not a scientist in this field?
Lunar? No, I mean, look. I have exposed myself to the scientists. I've read about it. I want to know. And incidentally, if you compare with other scientists of that era who were pitched the technology that brought man to the moon and back, this was and should have been the holy grail of aerospace technology at the time. But, you know, Neil Armstrong, who was the guy who you know, I mean, look inside the NASA lunar module thing. I mean, it is this confusing maze of switches and screens and little diodes and, you know, bizarre stuff. And this guy, this was the magician who successfully piloted this thing with no flaws to the surface of the moon and brought it back safely. This guy should have been the rock star of aerospace. Instead, he ends up as a professor, or an assistant professor even, at some obscure college in southern Ohio. I think it was like Cincinnati State University or something. And he was initially courted and headhunted by the Pan Ams of the day and the big airlines of the day, who wanted to, you know, incorporate everything he learned, basically all of his secrets. And there's a passage in Neil Armstrong's biography, not autobiography, but one of the authoritative biographies, that absolutely is not skeptical about the moon landing. That he was. I mean, they sort of brought him into the boardroom. I forget if it was TWA or Pan Am or whatever, and he started pitching out these fanciful notions about about aircraft design and aircraft flight and space flight, and the other like geniuses in the room who were actually dealing with nuts and bolts physics kind of politely, shook his hand and laughed him out of the room. And they all left going, there's no way we went. This is a crock of shit. This guy doesn't know anything. And this doesn't jibe with anything we know.
So the first moon landing conspiracies came about in, I think, the late 70s. And it wasn't some scientist. It was some random conspiracy theorist.
Well, I don't think that hurts the argument.
The genesis of it is entirely there.
No.
So what?
I mean, Martin Luther was some kooky, obscure monk in Germany drinking his beer, and
that's true. So what? So what? Can you rattle off names? Can you rattle off names of legit scientists who are skeptical of the moon landing?
Hold on. You know what? Yes, and I mean, no, I can't. But you know what?
There you go.
You can't do the same with 9/11 either.
Of legit scientists who are skeptical of 9/11?
Of 9/11.
Maybe that's because 9/11 is legit.
Okay. Well, perhaps. But there are legitimate questions about 9/11 that don't have satisfactory answers.
Such as?
Like Building 7.
I said that for the longest time. I watched a video about Building 7 of a guy actually explaining it. I admit I kind of forget what exactly the explanation is, but that sort of turned me away from the whole 9/11 thing, because I thought, okay, at least someone has an explanation that makes sense of Building 7, because that's always like the 9/11 truthers.
It's a silver bullet.
Yeah, it's like the falling back. It's like if they refute everything else, you say, you're like, but what about Building 7? But what about Building 7? And as soon as someone was like, look, there was a column in the middle, and the way that the flames engulfed it, and the type of metal, and the yada yada going through in very legitimate sounding, engineering terms.
Well, even if you solve Building 7, there are aspects of 9/11 that are, and I don't want to get down this rabbit hole.
That's not.
But I'll just throw one out there, which is that when the first plane crashed into the first tower in Manhattan, there were TV crews on the ground at street level. Okay, and at street level, the lobby of that building, the plate glass was completely blown out into the street, and there was smoke coming out at ground level, and people were walking around in a daze, injured and shell shocked and stuff. And the explanation offered for why the windows busted out on the bottom floor at street level and nowhere else other than where the plane hit on the 70th floor or something was that a fireball traveled down the elevator shaft and came out nowhere else, but it survived the entire path down and then blew out the windows at ground level.
Who am I to say that's not just how it works? I have no clue about pyrotechnics.
Okay, first of all, because there is not even a continuous single elevator shaft that goes all the way up to the 70th floor. They're staggered, and you have to get off one and get on another one, okay?
Fair enough.
Okay, so it's bizarre. And there were people who wandered up from the basement of that same building covered in smoke, tattered, and saying, oh my God, a bomb went off. Okay. But going back, if I may, to this argument of landing the rocket on the moon 50 years ago, and everybody going gaga a few years ago when Elon Musk did it on Earth. So the answer is, it was on the moon. That solves everything. There's lower gravity. There's no wind. There's no atmosphere, and therefore it's a cinch. It's a piece of cake. And if only
not a cinch, it's not a piece of cake. I'm sure they labored over it like mad.
Okay, but even accounting for the low gravity on the moon, we're still talking. And forgive me, I'd have to look this up. I don't walk around with the statistic in my head.
Look, if you're going to deny the moon landing, you should be a walking encyclopedia.
No. Well, okay. And give me a little show prep next time, and I will. Okay.
Yeah. I asked you, hey, do you want to do show prep? And you're like, no. We're fine.
But we're still talking about, I believe, on the order of 2 passenger cars of weight, okay, accounting for the reduced gravity of the moon. Now, second of all, it is falsely presumed by lay people that having no atmosphere is a boon, is an advantage to landing a rocket. It's actually not. Because it has its own trade-offs that make it maybe not only as hard, but possibly harder. Here's why. Because you will notice, and if you look at launches, SpaceX or whatever, where they have cameras on the rocket, at ground level, that rocket, the exhaust coming out the bottom end is honed into this perfect little point this perfectly predictable, focused point of energy. Okay, as the rocket goes up and the atmosphere gets less and less pressure and less dense, and then ultimately into outer space, that rocket is this huge blobby mess of, I mean, it's like it becomes a hairdryer. So it goes from a needle point that is extremely predictable and that is pushed in by the atmosphere to one that is just this huge gauzy mess that's totally unpredictable. And so on the moon, they didn't have this predictable little point that they could sort of mathematically account for and distribute evenly across the base of the landing craft. Instead, you know, they're coming in sideways at 6,000 miles an hour, and they turn on a hairdryer. And not only that, but whereas again on Earth you have this perfect little needle point that you can predict and set down on the moon, true, there is no atmosphere, but you're introducing atmosphere. You're creating atmosphere out of the exhaust from the rocket, and thus it's kind of pick your poison is what I'm saying. I think there are advantages to both, but I think that if anything, that the advantages are lost on the moon, because you're just kind of squirting this stuff willy-nilly all over the place. It's coming up, it's hitting fins. You absolutely can't predict where it's going to go, whereas on Earth, you have this perfect little needle point.
So there of course, and
incidentally, and this explains why every time we have gone to Mars and every time the Chinese have landed the Chang whatever lander, okay, they drop it. They literally, like, the closest the rockets can come is about, I don't know, 30 feet in the air or something with zero atmosphere. Okay, Mars admittedly has some atmosphere, but much reduced. The moon, of course, has none. And yet, even the Chinese in this day and age, and the Chang 4, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but even that thing, they were able to hover this thing about, I don't know, 30 feet off the ground, and then they just dropped. They dropped the lander. They just free fall. Okay? So And
maybe that's because it's easier because there aren't people on board. When you have people, you have to cushion the landing.
I don't believe that in 50 years that they're going to take this multi-billion-dollar instrument that has these delicate little solderers and everything like that and just say, well, we don't know if it's going to hit a rock or, you know, kind of land off kilter or anything like that. So, what the hell? We'll just drop it.
They thoroughly survey.
We know how to land rockets. We can land
Okay,
hold on. We can land at full Earth gravity the weight of 2 passenger cars, and these guys don't even get a nosebleed. They don't even chip a nail. Okay, 50 years ago, but modernly, the best we can do is just drop the damn thing.
That's because it's probably a lot cheaper.
And this explains. Why is it cheaper?
Because
why? What makes it cheaper?
When has China ever landed a rocket? They'd have to like figure out how to do that. That's R&D.
Okay.
R&D costs money.
Okay. When have we ever landed a rocket? On the moon, right? And SpaceX. Mm-hmm. Okay, but that doesn't explain why, with a couple of exceptions we can talk about, when we've landed stuff on Mars, what is it? It's these huge parachutes. Or if you go back to the early 2000s with the first rovers with cameras on them, they were actually bubble wrapped, and they just slammed these things into the freaking ground, and they just like bounced along. Okay, so it's like somewhere this just doesn't add up. And
I think it's a lot easier to drop a machine, no matter how complex, than it is to drop a couple of humans.
And incidentally, I want to clarify something about the moon landing. Okay.
Russia landed a rocket on the moon before we did.
That weighed about 2 ounces at moon gravity. Okay, this was an Estes rocket. So I'm not impressed, and I don't think that they quote unquote landed it.
What do you think they did?
I think they did something akin to what the Chinese have done with the Chang 4, or even more crudely. I think they got a rocket there. I think they air braked somewhat. They didn't make a soft SpaceX landing or a soft Apollo landing.
I'm pretty sure that the rocket went all the way. I don't think it was like Curiosity. They had the rocket and then they dangled the rover down. I don't think it was like that.
And incidentally, I do want to believe, again, this is part of American pride for me. I feel bad. There's like a kind of a hole in my heart that there are legitimate questions about the moon landing that strive for answers. Are we still on the air?
Oh, come on. All right, keep talking.
But
Feed
the
the
other
people your propaganda.
Yes. So the other facet of the moon landing that that gives me skepticism, and I'm trying to remember where I was going with this. I think there was a Mars tie-in.
Okay, so we were just talking about rovers.
Yeah, rovers on Mars and the difficulty in landing those. Okay. Yeah, so again, I want to believe, okay? Trust me on that. I really do. I want to walk around knowing that happened. That gives me comfort. It gives me security that America really is the greatest, okay? And so, incidentally, I'm not I'm not of the opinion, and I don't question the moon landing as such. You know what I mean? I'm not questioning it on its. Whoa, I think there was just a seismic event here in Beijing. Did you feel that?
Yeah.
I kind of. Whoa. Oh, okay. Okay, it's settling down now. And are those buildings all right?
They seem to be fine.
Are they?
I guess they're really built for earthquakes.
They're seismically engineered. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
so the Chinese, hold on.
View is like
okay.
Deciding not to work every 20 minutes or so.
So China can make a 200-story building that survives. What was that? About a 9.0. Those buildings aren't even moving, but they can't land a little box softly on the moon. No, but okay. Again, so my thesis is yes, I want to believe. Okay, and I've tried, dude. And like I said, I have tried to go to the source material.
So where did
I've gone
this
to
start
libraries,
for you?
but hold on.
Okay.
Let me finish. And again, I am not skeptical of or denying the moon landing itself, because there's another part of me that has analyzed the photographs and that I've really scoured.
Yeah.
Now there are some great photo analysts out there and some new ones that you and I should probably look at. No. There is some amazing stuff there, because there's a new guy. I'm trying to remember his name. And this guy spent tens of thousands of hours just looking over all of the photos on, I believe it's Flickr, where all the Apollo photos have landed. And he is convinced and has proof, quote unquote, if you will, okay,
as it
were, that the entire Apollo program was photographed in a junkyard in Arizona. I mean, he knows where it is.
Okay.
All right, and he has identified the spark plugs, the old cars, the junk littered around.
Okay, if NASA is going to eat up that much budget, because look, if there's a moon landing hoax, we need to make as few of the people as absolutely possible actually in on it, right?
Okay.
Because the more people that are allegedly in on this hoax, the more ridiculous the idea of a hoax becomes.
Dude, you need about 10 people to actually know. The rest of them can be none the wiser.
So what that means is that the U.S. government, the people who are allotting NASA this massive budget, right, wouldn't have known that it was fake.
Yeah.
NASA, with all that money, wouldn't have let spark plugs get in the frame.
Hold on. What is the saying about it is difficult, if not impossible, to make a man believe something if it is if it impedes his livelihood? I'm not saying it right, but basically NASA is a jobs program. It's a killer jobs program, and it's kind of like the U.S. mail service. It doesn't matter how great FedEx or UPS or whatever becomes. These guys are ardent believers in the U.S. mails and the U.S. Post Service, because that's how they get paid. Mm-hmm. All right, is adopting that doctrine. Now, going back though to my own skepticism, where I live with the moon landings, I'm not denying the moon landings, all right? And I'm not necessarily skeptical of the moon landings as such. What I'm skeptical of is that the Apollo mission landed men on the moon, and brought them back using the proffered technology.
So, it sounded like you were about to say that even though it's the most commonly cited tenet of the moon landing denying conspiracy theories, that the photos and videos to you are pretty good?
Yeah. Yes. Of course, I don't have a data set to compare them with. They exist by themselves.
That's true. But it's pretty easy to debunk a lot of the classic, we see wires, the flag was waving, why isn't Neil Armstrong, that's the whole
indeed.
the whole Mythbusters episode and all that.
Yeah.
And, the shadows don't debunk the moon landing. They lend a lot of credence to it, that they were able to light it with a light source that's that far away that would get you these exactly parallel shadows.
Yeah. I don't get into the shadow people and stuff. I can show you other ones that are truly mind bending. All right.
Okay.
Legitimate, unretouched. You don't have to do anything to them. You just look at it and go, whoa. Like how come nobody's ever seen this? How come no one's ever looked at this? What the hell is that? All right. But so what I'm saying is that I personally, I'm as a thinking sentient person, I am highly skeptical that the Apollo program was pulled off using the proffered technology, using, landing rockets on the moon, bringing men back, and doing all this stuff. Now, a lot of Michio Kaku type people, they say, oh, well, we've got satellite images and we have the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter took pictures and you can see this little blurry pixel down there. And that's obviously Apollo 16 or whatever. First of all, I put no faith in those pictures. That it's weird that Hubble can't get a good picture of it. That the
Hubble's not meant to take pictures of the moon.
Indeed, I know that the LRO can't. That we have no independent confirmation that this stuff is still there. Isn't that weird? In this day and age,
we have independent confirmation that we launched, that there was that the Apollo mission was legit, and that we were launching those guys up there. Look at the I can't cite the specific names of everything.
How is it though that we're able, any consumer with a freaking $20 phone can zoom up and see vehicles and people walking on the face of the Earth? And we don't have any clear photos of the surface of the moon at high enough resolution. The answer is because going beyond low Earth orbit is freaking hard.
Exactly. That's why we haven't gone back to the moon, because once we won the space race and showed that we could do it, there were so many fewer angles by which...
That's not how history works. We don't invent the transistor and go, we won! Now we're not going to do anything with it. It's just going to be in a museum.
We do invent... Wait, because...
We're going to put it in a book and everyone's going to wave the flag.
Exactly.
And we're good.
We were proving to Russia that we could get there faster.
Okay,
right?
well, just like everything else, smashing the atom and stuff. Well, we did it. Okay, now we can all relax, right?
Exactly. We can all relax because Russia...
Because then everyone else does it.
Okay, who was the guy? I forget his name. Who was the director of the Russian space program? Who his name was top secret. No one in America knew his name because he was that much of like a super genius who was at the head of the Russian space program that got them to have the first guy in space, the first spacewalk, the first et cetera, right? He died during the Russian man on the moon program. After that, their budgets got seriously cut. The massive financial failure of multiple failed test launches to get people to the moon. Russia's space program just petered out financially. It's not it's not that they figured out that it was really impossible.
Well, I still just it's just unfathomable to me that we're sitting here 50 years later and nobody has put a decent satellite mapping satellite in orbit around the moon. Nobody has revisited the Apollo sites, whether with a rover or with a webcam or anything.
Me too, but the fact is that moon landing skeptics are a tiny minority.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
What percentage of the American population is skeptical of the moon landing?
If you look at modern now maybe this is part of the effect of the internet where we have shows like Finding Bigfoot and stuff, and everyone's going, "Wow, I guess that's possible." But I honestly think it's around 20 to 25% of the American populace. We can Google it. I mean,
okay,
look it up. But yeah, dude.
So
we don't have anything, whether from NASA or any other space agency, confirmation of the actual hardware, the actual missions. There are no high resolution photos, no maps, no nothing. And this, what was the Google race to the moon? What was that thing called?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Google briefly funded a project where they promised $100 million or $300 million or something to the first team that could put a little remote control car pretty much on the moon and move it 100 feet, I think it was.
Yeah.
It was called, like Mission X or the X Prize or something like that. And you know, this was in the year 2014 or 15 or something, and they couldn't overcome the obstacles.
So what are these teams?
They were, you know, some of them were whole countries. Like Israel had one, and different Silicon Valley startups said they were going to go claim the prize.
All I'm saying is that look at the budget and the amount of time spent and the amount of attention given to both the Russian and the U.S. space programs before and after the moon landings.
Hold on a second, man. Easy with that. You know, you're acting like you kind of have this vague notion that because the baby boomer generation printed books about it and made posters and talked about it and put it on all these TV shows that, oh, everybody was on board. Like every person in America was like sending in money and rah and stuff. It wasn't. The country was splitting apart. We had race wars. We had Vietnam. We had the Kennedy assassination.
Look at the actual budgets. NASA got huge, but the amount of money that the government was allotting to NASA dropped way off after the Apollo program. That is a fact.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to see that, and second of all,
that's why we had the space shuttles, which sucked.
Dude, we have dumped huge amounts of money into failed. I mean, this is, you know this better than anyone. You just wrote a musical about it. That most of the time, no matter how ardently we strive to do something amazing, we usually end in complete failure. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how many people are on board with, you know, creating a bullet train in California. Or all these wacky ideas that have come and gone.
So okay, let's look at a bigger picture. So they faked. So Apollo 13, they faked a massive ordeal in real time to make it look like failure.
No, I don't think so. I think Apollo 13 can better be interpreted as we had pulled off Apollo 11. Okay.
Okay.
We pulled off. Now, I'm really showing my poor moon credentials, but Apollo 12, was that a successful mission?
I believe so. I think they were all legit. They were all successful except for 13.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong.
And it went through 16 or 17?
It went through 17.
Okay. So Apollo 12 was legit.
Yep.
And frankly, no one can remember the names of the Apollo 12
those poor guys.
Astronauts. They were just
they
guys.
were the second two people on the moon, and no one cares.
And then NASA itself was cognizant that nobody cared. There was no media, there was no hype, there was no nothing. And
there was hype for 12, but 13 it was getting a little thin.
And there was relaxation among the populace that, well, we did it. We can exhale now. We fulfilled Kennedy's mission to put a man on the moon. And the other thing, okay? And so Apollo 13, I'm going to revise my answer. Yes, it was a hoaxed emergency to rally the public and to make a great story about the Great Escape and the, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. So
you're saying that you need 10 people to believe, to pull off a conspiracy theory, to actually be in on it. More than 10 people allegedly were in these Apollo missions.
You know, that's like saying more than 10 people were part of 9/11, or I mean that's a stupid one, but you could name any number of the Gulf of Tonkin. I don't know, just pick whatever your thing is.
Gulf of Tonkin is way easier to hoax than the moon landing.
Okay, but you get my point though. A lot of people can just unwittingly go along with something that isn't real. All right. No, okay.
The
religion.
People who apparently went to the moon had to have been in on it. Now, I'm not saying that makes it more than 10, and 10 was your...
religion is a perfect example.
Okay.
Religion. because there are people who, without question, without any doubt, without any skepticism, adopt as a full article of faith every word of the Quran, of the Bible, of the Veda scriptures or whatever. Okay, millions of people. All right. And indeed, what is a country other than just a story that people are telling? And they write the story down and they repeat it often enough, and enough people believe in it that it becomes this cohesive thing. And they say, well, there's a line right here, and there's a word right here, and it means something. And there are 9 people in black robes who, they don't have guns or an army or anything, but when they write something down, the whole entire country obeys it. And it's like these high priests. I'm speaking about the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You know, why does anybody heed or believe anything they say? What if we defied them and just said, well, you're meaningless? Well, we don't, because it's been written down and we all believe it. It's part of our national myth. And yet
doesn't work for something as direct as either real or not real as the moon landing. You're drawing a false equivalency.
No, I disagree. I think the moon landing is even less real, because once you get someone off the surface of the moon, once you launch something, and all these crowds go, oh wow, man, look at that. It's gone, and then they're fed this super grainy, ghosty image of a ancient TV camera pointed at a screen, which incidentally, though that is the state of the art for Apollo 11. They have no actual source footage for any of that.
These poor guys were trying to do a television broadcast from the moon.
Which again, they had unlimited budget. They had all the money in the world.
Not unlimited. Huge, not unlimited. There's a difference.
This wasn't the year 1850, okay? The TV cameras and tape and stuff, that was a known thing. It was global. It was worldwide.
Not broadcasting from another body.
That doesn't change anything, dude. The signal's the same. You receive it on Earth, and you capture it. And yet, that's gone.
Okay, but they had... So not only is it from another body, but they only had their little Apollo land, their little lunar lander, lunar module, whatever it's called, as the full base of their technology that also had to account for everything else. It was gonna be a weak signal. They had to figure out how to transmit it and everything. It's interesting how you pivot from, it was this awesome thing, everyone came together, the whole nation was behind it, we spent all this money on it, to you become this apologist for why we don't have the footage. It's like, oh, because they were on the moon, you dummy. Look,
how could they? Don't blame
budget.
them.
I'm not saying unlimited budget. I'm saying, look, just because it's a huge budget doesn't mean that it's not a limited budget.
Okay, but
I'm sure that they probably went over budget. The government was probably mad at them.
Okay. And yet we can't preserve the only and the best proof that this actually happened. Nobody is watching that. Nobody's guarding that. That's not sacred. It's not in the Smithsonian. It's not in the Library of Congress.
Pictures.
It's just yeah, we don't really know. It's gone.
Yeah, we've got the pictures.
Yeah, okay, and we need to do a show on the pictures, because
the gray picture that when you increase the contrast, it's a pyramid.
I'm not familiar with that one.
You don't? So yeah, there's a bunch of pictures from Apollo 11, right? And they're all of like guys in spacesuits and of the lunar module and the flag or whatever, the surface of the moon. There's one that's just like a regular, like a solid gray color, but if you turn up the contrast a ton, it looks like an Egyptian freaking pyramid.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And incidentally, myself having gone through many of the Apollo pictures, which are good.
Yeah.
And I think they are probably, if I'm on the fence, they're the thing that pushes me over into this was real and legitimate. And it gives me feelings looking at them. Yeah. Because the pictures are so good. They're so crisp. Now, this is despite the guy who is like blowing up the internet with this was all filmed at a junkyard. He has proof, and it's all right there in the pictures, and it's just a big joke. Because myself, having gone through many of those pictures from all the Apollo missions and tweaking the contrast up and down, there's this familiar argument that, well, where are the stars? You can't see the stars. Actually, you can.
It's called dynamic range.
No,
by the way.
yeah. Actually, you can. It did they did capture faint starlight in many of those images, and when you tweak the contrast, the stars come out.
Yeah.
Now, and what's weird though is that with some of these images, when you tweak the contrast. Now, I haven't seen the one that's showing pyramid on the surface of the moon, but there is weird stuff flying around in the sort of lunar sky.
Oh yeah, Apollo 12. There was a UFO, and like I think it was Apollo 12.
Yeah, and there are these bizarre, like, I don't know how to describe them except they look extremely alien, floating in the air when these guys were snapping pictures, and that kind of, you know, sends me on a different
Exactly.
a
Why
different
would
path.
they hoax that?
Yeah, and so but you can bring out faint stars from the background, and I think that if it, you know, to argue that point, that if these were trick photography and this was done in a studio or it was done at a junkyard or whatever like that, that it wouldn't have this fine grain and faint starlight, and that would be very hard. I mean, it's one thing to kind of duplicate the, you know, like a gray surface of the moon, but to get the sky as well as they did and not just this flat black background is pretty convincing when you look at it. And again, there are anomalies. There are things flying around up there in the photos, and I've showed these to some of my buddies at work, and I said, okay, what is that in the sky? And one of my good friends, a Russian actually at work, he says, oh, that's you know, that's an insect or something that got on the film. And I'm like, dude, hold on a second. Where's this insect coming from? Like, how did it get on there? And why is it, you know, kind of the same resolution as these other features in the background of the photo? I mean, it looks for all the world like there is something in the sky, you know, following the astronauts around.
All right, I've got a question.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears because I don't particularly like talking about the moon landing because it makes my uncle seem crazy, which I guess you are, but what do you think is the now here's the thing about now I talked about this on the last podcast, unfortunately, but the thing about UFOs is that they're a bit of a weird animal because they don't have much to do with video footage, right? Or pictures. Usually the most, like, except for the recent ones with from the fighter jets and stuff, the video footage of UFOs pretty much all suck.
Well, I disagree. Wow, I disagree, man. There's
because it's so easy to fake. It is in this day and age. Like, remember the one from Israel where they got multiple angles of like the light landing and then taking off?
No, I do not.
It was a hoax, but it blew up the internet. It looked incredible. It was a hoax. It was done by a film school professor and his students.
Okay.
Like, it's so incredibly easy to fake.
I think it is
UFO footage.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is are among the most convincing, unidentified flying object cases?
Well, cases. Okay, if we're gonna talk cases, and this is one I'd have to ruminate on for a while. Of
course.
But there have been I can think of one example that was widely reported during the time and kind of for some reason oddly kind of pushed away, that occurred at O'Hare Airport in Chicago.
Yeah, that one's legit.
Where, I mean, it lit up air traffic control. People were pointing at it. Lots of witnesses, and even supposedly a great clear picture that somebody claims to have seen that has been kind of archived away or hidden away from the public.
And the real kicker for that one is that, like, the FAA, they found out that the FAA just full on covered it up.
Yeah.
Like, they had to go out and say, okay, fine, because like they found the tapes of people saying like, don't talk about this, or something like that.
Yeah, and
like that's the most clear, like, active cover up.
And to go back and say, well, it was a cloud, or everyone was just kind of seeing things. Now here's one that's not so much a sighting as more along the lines of a cover up and a Roswell type thing. Kecksburg.
Haven't heard of it.
Okay, Kecksburg. This is a landing craft, if you will. Okay, kind of acorn in shape, metallic, that came screaming out of the sky and crashed in a forest in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. This is northern Pennsylvania. This was, I think, in the mid 50s or thereabouts. And
is this the Flatwoods Monster?
No,
Okay.
No monster at all. Just a
Okay.
craft. Just this bizarre, again, kind of acorn-shaped thing lying there that witnesses went out and saw strange writing on. Now, the strange writing that honestly strikes me as a little bit like H.P. Lovecraft or something. You know, like what a mystery writer of the 50s would have written.
For sure.
But yeah, strange Egyptian-looking hieroglyphics and things like that. But this thing, you know, honest to God, was there. People were pointing at it, looking at it, and you know, lo and behold, next thing you know, camo dudes are there, and they've got cranes and trucks, and they load it up, put a big tarp around it, and just drive off, and it's never seen again. And this one has merited real scholarship, and there's a pretty darn good chance that this was some experimental Russian satellite or other craft, and space geeks have even...
The strange writing was just Russian.
It was Cyrillic, yeah, but it looked like hieroglyphics to Americans. And they've even pinpointed, they've identified the craft that indeed fell out on that day and landed somewhere in northern United States or Canada or something.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's a very intriguing story, and one that, again, you know, serious scholars have looked into, and it stands up. Of course, it's not as big or well known as Roswell.
Roswell's a little bit, it's cool, but it's iffy.
Here's the thing about Roswell is that, you know, I kind of wish that I could go back in time and be in that newsroom and that newspaper publishing place where they, you know, the Roswell Times or whatever said flying saucer captured.
Yeah. Next day.
Yeah.
And then the next day it's like, oh, it was just a weather balloon.
But I mean, it's kind of like, because you can't go on the frickin' History Channel or look anywhere or look at Roswell. You can't open a book without seeing that dumb newspaper headline where, oh, we've had a flying saucer.
Yeah.
And it kind of, you know, it's sort of like, it's, you know, everyone runs that up the flagpole as, look, it was on the front page of the newspaper.
Yeah.
And if you and I were sort of just getting into ufology right now, we'd be going, look, man, it was in the newspaper. It was real. It really happened. Whereas, you know, now we know that, you know, back in the day, they wrote all kinds of kooky stuff about giants and, you know, air balloons and dirigibles and lake monsters and stuff.
That's what's hard about the airships from the late 1800s. You know about these?
No.
So before Kitty Hawk, right? 1890 to 1900 approximately, there was this wave of airship sightings where people would see these like weird like steampunk type, like, you know, seeming to be run by, of course, like people using the technology that they knew at that time, like these big weird flying crafts with like huge propellers and like, you know, steam engines and wings, like flapping around with like big like leather wings and stuff. And then they'd land and there would be these guys in weird like top hats and goggles that were like, we're from Thomas Edison's company or something like that.
which for today they were the modern equivalent of, you know,
little green men.
Yeah.
But the problem is that like back in the 1800s, newspapers just lied about everything.
Yeah.
Like they would just make stuff up.
Yeah. There's a lot of not only yellow journalism, but just sensationalistic journalism about, you know, about the wild man from Borneo or the lake monster from wherever, or the you know, Jacko or whatever. What?
Yeah, the Jacko.
Jacko, which has been revealed to be itself
just a guy.
Yeah.
It was like, hey man, how's it going? Wait, I thought this was supposed to be a small ape man.
But getting back to Roswell though, the last time that I kind of looked into that, there was a guy on Coast to Coast making the rounds who had written a new book. This guy is frickin', I wish I could remember his name.
Like Friedman or something?
No. I kind of a second gen Roswell guy. Stanton Friedman being one of the first real proponents of Roswell and a legit Berkeley physicist or something.
Okay.
But no, this guy, more obscure. You haven't heard of him, but such a wonderful technical mind and scientific mind, and a great writer. And he has written a book that's on Kindle that you can read. And nobody has gone into as fine-grained detail about the caskets, about the funeral home, about major this, about the parts, the crafts, the the photographs. I mean, every single fine-grained detail, every rabbit hole you can go down, this guy has gone down. And he wrote this very concise book that's on Kindle, where, you know, he basically comes to the conclusion up front. He goes, you know what, you know, if you put a gun to my head, it was all just hype.
Yeah.
There was nothing alien about it, and it was just a lot of confusion and sensationalism.
Yeah.
That kind of snowballed. So I, you know, gun to the head, that guy who, you know, has kind of done my homework for me on Roswell. I kind of feel like I don't really need to go down that one. Yeah. And I'm just going to kind of set that one in the back burner, let it stay there. Let the History Channel have it. Let other newbies have it, and look for other untilled soil.
So here are the two that I always go to. First one is the Phoenix Lights. Just because that is the single... You've got to be kidding me.
Oh, my God.
It's every 20 minutes. I'm pretty darn sure it's just every 20 minutes. Talk.
Okay. Okay, the Phoenix Lights. Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting because when that was first coming into prominence... Now, this happened in what, mid-96, 97?
97.
Help me out. Okay, about 97. When this first caught the attention of the sort of ufology community and was blowing up and people were putting money and time into it, there was a prominent effort by digital media photo analysts, video analysts of the kind of early 2000s that, to my mind, very convincingly demonstrated that these lights were in fact flares.
Totally weren't flares.
That just floated. I don't know how the flares were able to suspend in the sky so long. Maybe it's parachutes or something, but they were dropped in a V shape to the perspective of downtown Phoenix or whatever it was. And as the craft traveled, a guy who he basically went to ground zero of the best piece of footage and lined it up with the mountainside in the background, and you simply see these lights one after another blinking out as this craft travels behind the mountain in a V shape. Now then again, there is another angle to this, that the craft wasn't just in Phoenix. It was throughout the entire kind of desert Southwest.
That's true.
Other people saw it. It lit up switchboards. Other people videotaped it, took pictures of it, etc. And that by the time it got to Phoenix and everyone was going crazy and phones were ringing and people were videotaping and stuff like that, that the National Guard went out in an attempt to lay a layer of legitimacy over it, and they dropped a bunch of flares in this kind of like V pattern through the sky.
The flares were dropped, by the way, at about 9 p.m. Phoenix Lights disappeared from Arizona about 7:30.
Okay, so hang on. So there was a legitimate flare dropping event that everybody agrees on.
Yes.
Okay, and
that's what the main piece of footage that you'll see of the Phoenix Lights was taken at about 9:30, 10.
Okay.
That was
now
flares.
why on the same day that there was this sighting of a triangular craft, why were a bunch of flares dropped in Phoenix?
I don't know.
Was this to create a convincing and innocuous cover story so that the government could point to and say, well, it's just the
perhaps
flares.
and of course it always becomes maybe all the people who said that they saw flares at 7, they saw a craft at 7:30 were just seeing flares at 9, and they just conflated their memories. The kicker for me is that it was dismissed by the media, but then the mayor at the time of Arizona totally dismissed it and had a press conference talking about how it was totally stupid, despite it being to date the UFO case with the most witnesses. Later, once he's not the mayor anymore, says he actually saw the lights and is now within the ufology communities. Fife Symington, he's goes to the Phoenix Lights conferences and stuff.
Now you're saying mayor, he was actually the governor of Arizona, was he not? Yeah, and he dutifully, I think at the time, made kind of a spoof, made light of it, and said, "Oh, it was aliens, ha ha ha." No, everything's fine. You know, nothing got past us. This was just a little military exercise, and but again, he kind of dutifully did that because that's what politicians are supposed to do. But meanwhile, yeah, he was shaken, and he still is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And there's Phoenix Lights, which just I like it because it's the biggest one as far as the number of witnesses. Here's the other one. Now this one's pretty interesting. Cash Landrum. So
tell me more.
Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Colby Landrum.
Now is this Texas?
This is Texas.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is two old ladies who are like 57 and 50 or something respectively, or like maybe one of them's older, I forget. And one of their grandchildren, right? So it's Colby Landrum and Vicky Landrum. Vicky Landrum's his grandma, and then Vicky Landrum's friend Betty Cash are driving down the street in Texas. It's night. It's like nighttime, not super late. And then they're in front of them. There's this like big like metal type, object that's just on the road, and it's like super hot, emitting it's melting their car and stuff. They go out to look at it. They're super freaked out, and then it gets escorted away by a bunch of military helicopters. Sounds totally ridiculous. So the reason why they came forward with this story is that they were all experiencing like extreme levels of poisoning and illness. Their hair was falling out. They were super fatigued, and they were like, especially Betty Cash, got super sick. And so they went to the hospital, and the doctors in the hospital didn't know what to make of it. It didn't seem to be radiation poisoning. It was more akin to chemical poisoning, right? So the question then becomes, okay, so they're making up this pretty fantastical story, but then they poison themselves, including this 10-year-old or 7-year-old or something like that kid, Colby, who also experienced these symptoms of severe chemical poisoning. Their story stays the same. And now, of course, everyone says, well, it was a hoax, and these two evil, like, you've got to understand, uncharacteristically sadistic old women decide to just come up with this horrific story and poison their little grandson.
Not only that, but not knowing much about the sort of life history of these two older middle-aged Texas women, I have to believe that in their little tea circle or their knitting circle, this ostracized them and made them the biggest freaks at church, at the social hour, at whatever. And for them, of all people, to come forward with such a story like this, and not only that, but to put another layer over it, most so-called or self-proclaimed UFO or alien contactees who sort of dream this up and who do it for publicity or for self-promotion or whatever, they have a better story. They talk about the benevolent space brothers and how they showed them cool videos and how they're gonna save the world.
It doesn't seem like space aliens. It seems like a government thing.
And they're working for harmony and everything. Whereas this one, they didn't get anything cool out of it.
Yeah.
They didn't get to see a logbook or Travis Walton style get to steer the UFO around or anything. No, they just had this really brief glimpse, a sighting, and it basically almost killed all of them, and it just totally sucked.
Yeah, and they didn't come home saying, we saw a UFO. They went to the hospital, and the doctors were like, what happened to you? And they were like, okay, we saw this weird thing. And the real kicker, maybe, you can Occam's razor it into being a hoax that was perpetrated by two complete psychopaths. But Colby Landrum's still alive. He's in his 40s now, and he has not changed the story at all.
Wow. Yeah,
and you would think he would say, hey, my evil grandma and her friend poisoned me because they're...
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Rendlesham Forest.
That one's also pretty cool. That's
Wow.
Britain's Roswell, except it's way better than Roswell.
Yeah, because now this was a 2-day event, was it not?
2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3, yeah. And we had multiple sightings, near the base of some kind of a smaller craft.
By the way, Cash Landrum and Rendlesham Forest within 1 week of each other.
Is that right?
Yeah, they
No
were
way.
both in the same week in 1980.
Wow. Although describing very different looking craft, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I didn't know that.
it was like 1 week or 1 month or something crazy. I think it was within a week
In 1980.
in 1980.
Yeah, I recently listened to a podcast or read an article or something about Rendlesham, how not only did these GIs go out in the forest and physically touch and see this bizarre thing kind of hovering in the woods, but I think it was the next day they got another radar blip and traveled off base. And looking up, we're all just stunned seeing this thing hover, or one or two craft hover in the sky, and this was the more kind of disturbing event actually than the first one, which was just encountered by like a couple of guards or something, because everybody was standing there, including senior brass on the base, just looking at this thing hovering in the sky, going, "What the hell? Like we're the world's over. This is." Independence Day or something. So if you're just joining us, this is the inaugural vlog. What do we call this?
It's called a podcast.
Okay, podcast. Featuring to my left, your right, Frank Hurley.
Hello.
Say hi. I am Ryan Hurley. I am Frank Hurley's uncle.
Correct.
And this is February 17th. And, I wish I could tell you what time it was because I didn't change my watch when we crossed the date line.
Yeah, that's true.
It could be the 18th.
Yeah, here in Shanghai, it's across the international date line. So,
It was 1:30 in the afternoon, back Pacific Coast time. I have no idea what time it is right now. But yeah, as you can see, we are now it looks like we're hovering above greater Shanghai.
Yeah.
We just have the blinds open to our
Oh yeah, in our penthouse suite that we got here.
Yeah, this window right here is yeah, you can see me knocking.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so look, we wanted to give you guys a good show for our inaugural podcast.
We've got a family reunion up here in Shanghai, China.
We care about our viewers
for Chinese New Year. It's everyone's like flying like parades with huge paper dragons and in the streets and stuff.
The parade that's going on down there. We were just down there.
Yeah. We've got soundproofing foam and insulation all around us because if not, you would hear all like the explosions and the everything.
The fireworks. Yeah, in fact, I was just sitting in front of one, but one just went off behind me.
Yeah,
I could kind of see the faint afterglow of it.
It was pretty intense. You can see there's permanent firework glow in the the sky right
you
there.
can see it. That's weird, and you can tell that's not clouds or fog.
No, it's
because
not
it
clouds
has
or fog.
that smoky haze that's kind of hanging
for
in
sure.
the air.
It is. It's going off. These Chinese people know how to party in the streets.
It is, and it's what, Year of the Pig now?
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, what is your Chinese zodiac?
Oh, Year of the Horse.
Year of the Horse.
Heck yeah.
Okay, and what is what are the characteristics of the horse?
Well,
steadfast, stubborn,
see,
ignorant plow animal. No, sorry.
See, the Chinese were geniuses, and so they reasoned that everyone born within a year of each other is going to have similar characteristics. That's just how it works.
Okay.
So, honestly, I've heard so many conflicting things about the Year of the Horse. I don't know. It's like stubborn. I've heard cheerful and popular. I've heard always like wants to be where the action is. I've heard a bunch of crazy stuff. The horse is an ill-defined Chinese zodiac.
Okay, but I think I get the gist of it, and it's sort of riffing on the natural personality that we think of horses having. They'll fearlessly run into battle with their rider on them. They're nice barnyard animals. They're well regarded personality wise, and for the most part, they don't attack. I am a rat.
Very nice.
Yeah, I'm kind of cunning and devious, very intelligent, but not trustworthy. So there you go. But it's an absolute honor.
So you're not going to be a made man.
I want to I want to thank our hosts here in Shanghai for putting us up. And for our great sponsors. Now we're not so so groveling is to name our sponsors on air. We don't do that, but just believe us that we do have some sponsors.
They're legit.
That we're very grateful for putting us up here in China, paying for the charter plane, and who are going to get us to our next destination.
Absolutely. When we're doing the first ever live broadcast from the middle of the Sahara.
Yeah,
it's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's going to take some. It's gonna take a ground crew, but we've got good people on board.
We're gonna have a disc, like a SETI level disc that's just beaming the information out into the world.
Yeah,
and out in the middle of the desert.
And so we want to thank you for joining us on our first broadcast. By the way, how many viewers are we up to right now?
I have no clue.
Have we crested 1 million?
My mouse is all the way over there, so I don't want to get up and check.
On the other side of the penthouse apartment.
Yeah, I know. It's like a maze up here. It's not even particularly open concept. There's so many rooms. This is how awesome this Shanghai penthouse apartment is. There's a green screen room that they just have in there in case you want to use a green screen. Now, we're not on the green screen, obviously, but if we were to be on the green screen.
And for some reason, the crew over there can't hear me through the soundproof glass. Hey guys, can you hear me? Yeah, see, they for some reason they don't have their cans on, so
yeah.
It's hard to talk.
It's hard to.
But that being said, is that our takeout?
It's our
I
takeout.
see bags coming in. I think I see bags coming in. Tell you what, we're gonna sign off here for a little nourishment.
Indeed, we are going to eat some delicious. That's what Chinese people always tell you is like, I want to take you Americans to eat real Chinese food. And I'm like, well, I've had Chinese food. No, you haven't.
No, you haven't.
No. American Chinese food is its own genre of food.
Yeah.
So we're about to have some real Chinese food.
This is legitimate. Wish you could join us.
Oh, it's going to be delicious.
Yeah, we'll let you know all about
the
it.
feather-in duck. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So again, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time on the Frank and Ryan podcast. Signing off.